In this video I want to answer one of the requests that we've received on our forum, and the request was how to send messages to Telegram that include images. So I'm assuming that that means that you want to send something like a screenshot from your MetaTrader. And what I'm showing here on Telegram is a tutorial channel that I set up. These simple test messages, like this first one here, I'm just sending those as an example. You might want to send from your expert something like a message every time you execute a trade. So these simple messages, easy enough. I've got a few of those here. But then if you want to send a message that includes a screenshot like this with your trade, then it's much more complicated. So I'm going to cover this today in 3 parts. I'm going to very quickly go over how to set up Telegram so that it can receive these messages from you. And this is a very brief introduction to how to set that up. You can probably find much better information if you just want to search for how to set up channels and receive messages through the API for Telegram. But I will cover that quickly. Then I will show how to send these simple messages if you don't know how to do those. And then I'll expand on that and show how you can send an image with the message. So if this is going to be useful to you, stay with us, click the like button, and if you like seeing our videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon to be notified when we release new videos. So I'll go on now with the demonstration of how to set up Telegram so that it can receive these messages. I've already created a channel here, Orchard Tutorial 1, and that's what I'm going to be using for the demonstration and to develop the code. The first thing I need to do is create a bot that has the rights to publish on this channel. So I go to bot father and enter /newbot, and then it wants a name for my bot. And then it wants a bot name. So the bot name doesn't have spaces and must end in _bot, or must end in bot. Okay, so now I have that bot. What I'm going to do is go back to the channel because that bot now needs the privilege to post onto that channel. So I'm adding a member. So I've typed the name of my bot here in the add members. Click add. Bots can only be added as administrators, so I'll make it an admin. I don't need it to do all of these things. I don't want it to change the channel info. I do want to post messages. I don't want editing or deleting messages or adding members or managing live streams. So just post messages. That's enough. All right, so now I have the bot. Now if we go back to bot father, you'll see that here, use this token to access the HTTP API. This token here. You'll need that information. I'm just going to copy that. Now I also need the channel ID. To get that, I'm just going to create a test message, any message at all, and then I'm going to forward that to the get Telegram ID bot. And that bot responds with the chat ID. And I want the chat ID including that -sign. So now I have a channel, I have a bot that I've created that has access to that channel, and I have the token for the bot, and I have the channel ID. So now let's write the code to just start sending simple messages, and then I'll enhance that with the code to send the screenshots. Now I'm writing the code. I will be writing this for both MetaTrader 4 and 5. I've got Telegram Publisher.mq5 open at the moment. The code is almost identical for these two, but I will just show it for MetaTrader 5, although the code for MetaTrader 4 and 5 will both be available on GitHub. So I've just got the beginnings here. This is a script. I'm writing this as a script because I'm going to be using the web request function, and the web request function only works in experts or scripts. I don't need to embed this in an expert at the moment, so I'm just writing this as a script. But remember, you cannot use web request in an indicator. So here are the beginnings. The Telegram bot token, we got this from Telegram, so I'm just going to copy that and paste it in. And that's the token I got when I created the bot with BotFather. And then next is the chat ID, which I got by sending that message to get Telegram ID. So that's my chat ID. And then the Telegram API URL, I've embedded this here as well. And this is https://api.telegram.org. It's always that. And this is what you must add to MetaTrader to allow URLs. I'm just going to go back into MetaTrader now, and we'll do that so that you can see it. Now this is MetaTrader 5, but the technique is almost the same for MetaTrader 4. You won't have any trouble understanding this. Go to Tools, Options, Expert Advisors, and then here, allow web request for listed URL, and add the URL there. And OK. Then I also have here two integer values. One's commented out, the URL defined error. So this is the error you'll get back if you forget or incorrectly set that web request URL. And the number is different for MetaTrader 4 and 5. So I've included both here and just commented out the MetaTrader 4 version. And for MetaTrader 5, it's a 4014. And for MetaTrader 4, the error number is a 4066. So now, because this is a script, I'm just going to go into the onStart function. First, I'm calling chart redraw, because if I've got an indicator on the chart and this is running in the background, I want to make sure that the chart has been refreshed. It's not really important for a script, but if I were running this as an expert advisor, it's a good idea to call a chart redraw, because you may not be viewing that chart when the expert advisor fires this function. And then I just take a chart screenshot. And the arguments to chart screenshot are simple. The chart number 0, a name, which I'm just calling this my screenshot.jpg at the moment, the width and height, 1024 by 768 in this case, and a line right. So that will save a file in the files folder called myscreenshot.jpg. And then I'm not using it at this stage, but that's all there is to taking the screenshot. First, I'm just doing this simple case where I'm sending a message to Telegram. Now this message could be a trade you've just placed or an indicator that's just fired. All I'm going to be doing is sending a test message. So I'm calling a function send Telegram message, the Telegram API URL, which I've defined here, the Telegram bot token, and the chat ID. And then here's my message, just test message plus, and then the time. Now, as I said, that message can be anything. It's just a string. And for this example, no image is attached. We'll get to that later. So this is just the standard. I'm sending a piece of text to a Telegram channel. And now the send Telegram message function. So the arguments to that are the base URL, token, the chat ID, and the text that I'm going to send. I'm going to need some working variables, because when I send a web request, these are required in the arguments. I need headers, the actual request URL, so I'm not going to be posting directly to this. I have to manufacture a new URL, which we'll see in a moment. Post data, which is a char array, result data is also a char array, and the result headers. So result data and result headers come back from the call. And then a timeout. I'm just setting this for 1000 at the moment. That's 1 second. It may well be too short for a slow connection, or when we get to sending the file, I'll probably increase that because it'll take longer to send the file than it does to send a simple text message. This is where I build up the actual request URL. I'm using string format to do this because I just find it's easier to see the layout rather than using concatenation. But the actual request URL begins with the URL that was passed in, so that is the Telegram API URL /bot, and then the token for that bot. No spaces, just BOT and then the token. So token will be filled in here where the %S placeholder is. /send message chat underscore ID equals, and then that %s will be filled in by the chat, ampersand text equals, and then the text. So that's the complete URL to send for a simple text message to Telegram. Now before I send the message, I'm actually doing a reset last error so that I can capture the error if something goes wrong. The response comes back from the web request function. I'm using post as the method, passing in the URL, the request URL that I built up here, headers, which I've left blank, timeout 1000, post data, which is just an empty char array because I'm not actually using post data for the simple text example, result data to come back, and result headers will come back. And that will send the message to Telegram just as a plain text message. And then I want to test that this response was successful, so I'm just going to put in some code to check that. All I'm doing here with a switch statement, switch response, if the code is a -1, then I capture the error code from get last error and I just print the message to say that was my error code. If the error code is that URL defined error, so here, the error number that we set up earlier, that's a special case, and I can actually print a message that the address may not be listed in the allowed URLs. A 200 is success. I'm just going to print the message was successfully sent, and anything else, I'm getting the result back, char array to string. So remember that result data is a char array. So I'll convert that back to a string, and then I'm just printing unexpected response, the response number, and the string that came back. And once we're through all of that, I can return. Remember, this function is a Boolean function, Boolean send Telegram message. So I'm returning response is equal to 200. So only a 200 is success. That's a complete function. I'll just see if I got this correct. I'll compile it. That passed. And now if I run this, I should get a message showing up in Telegram with test message. That didn't work. I've got an error here. Let me go back to the code and check. I've added an extra space there in the chat ID. Just remove that. Compile again. Run, and now I just bring the Telegram back onto the screen here, and there it is, test message, done. So that's the simple case, but sending an image with that is much more difficult. Now back here to the code then. I have already captured a screenshot, so that's waiting for me to send. So I'm going to make a second send Telegram message function, or rather I'm going to modify that. So I'm going to make a second call to it. In this case, I'm sending the same message, but I'm also including the name of my screenshot file. Now I have to modify the send Telegram message function here because I've added an extra argument. I'm defaulting that to an empty string so that if I do make this initial call, it will still work because I haven't passed the file name. But in cases there are a file name, I'll be sending that as an image. It will take a little longer to send a file, so I'm going to increase this timeout to 5,000. And next, this request URL is going to be different if I'm sending a photo. So the difference here, I'm still beginning with the base API URL and then bot followed by the token. But in this case, I'm calling /send photo, where for a simple message, I was calling /send message. And you'll see that I also don't have the other arguments, the chat ID and the text. They don't occur in the send photo. Now the reasons for this, firstly, you can't send text and a photo in the same post to Telegram. You can send the photo along with a caption, but it's a different call to send a photo. That's the /send photo. Also, I can't simply add ampersand photo equals to this because the photos are binary data. So I need to send this as post data. And you'll remember that we have post data already defined. Here it is, but it wasn't used for the simple text message. So now I have to build up that post data. And so I've got a function here called get post data. And I pass in the post data because that gets filled and returned. And the headers also get updated. And then the chat and the text and the file name. So all of this data, the chat, the text message, and the file name, or the file contents, will be embedded in this post data when this function returns. And that will return a Boolean. And if that's false, then I was unable to set up that post data, and I'll simply return false from this function. So the get post data will give me everything I need to be able to send that message. So as part of the get post data, I'm passing in a file name rather than the contents of the file. So this file name is where I did that screen capture earlier. If I just scroll back up to the beginning, I called chart screenshot, saving to myscreenshot.jpg, and I passed myscreenshot.jpg as the file name into this send telegram message. So that's just a file name. I need to read the contents of that file. Reset last error, and then I check to see that the file exists to make sure that you've passed the correct file name. And if it doesn't, I just print an error message and return false. And then I need to read the contents of that file. So the flags, I'm going to be opening the file for reading, and it's a binary file. So file read or file bin, and that goes into this int flags. I call file open, pass the file name and the flags, and I store that handle in a variable called file. And then I say if file is equal to invalid handle, that means that I was unable to open the file. So again, I get an error, I get last error, and I print the message, couldn't open the file name and the error, and then return false. Now if I get to this point, I've opened the file and I just need to load that data in. So I need to know the size of the file, so this int file size, and I get that with the file size function. That simply tells me how large the file is. And I need that because when I read the file, I have to tell the function how much data to read. I declare this uchar photo array, and that's going to hold the data that I read back from the file. And then I call array resize on that photo, and I resize that to the file size to make sure it's big enough. And then file read array, and I pass the file handle, the array of data, this uchar photo, beginning position, and the amount of data to read. So I'm beginning at 0 at the beginning, and I'm reading everything in the file. And then I'll just close the file with the file close function. So after that, I have a uchar that contains all of the data from that file, which is the screenshot that we want to send to Telegram. Now post does have a specific format. It has certain rows that are delimited by carriage return line feed that must exist. It has certain indicators to say what the type of data is for each element that's being passed. It's effectively an array in a long string, and so it needs to follow certain formatting conventions. And I'm going to be writing yet another function to make that easier because I've got several elements to add, and rather than repeat the code for each of those elements, I'm going to be calling this function to do that. I will need a hash. I'm setting that to an empty string to begin with. The hash is actually used as a delimiter to show when one piece of data is ending and another is beginning. I'm setting that to an empty string, and it will be filled in the first time I make the call to this new function that I'm going to be writing, add post data. And I just pass in the post data that I have, which is this same post data that was passed in here. So this will be gradually populated each time I call it. I pass that. I pass the hash, which as I said is initially an empty string but will be filled in with a hash value the first time I make this call. And then the name of the argument that I want to pass, chat ID, And let me scroll back up again. In the simple text message, I was able to pass chat_ID as an argument in the URL. I still need to pass the chat ID, but I'm passing that now as part of the post data. So chat ID and then chat, which I passed in here as one of the arguments. So this add post data will take care of adding chat ID and the value of chat into this post data. I'll write the rest of the calls to this and then we'll look at the add post data and how that works. And the second piece of information is that text message that we want to send, which could be empty. So I'm actually testing to see if the length of that text is greater than 0. I'm not going to add it if it's an empty string. And I make the same call then, add post data hash. But rather than for the simple text message I sent this as text, it has to be a caption if I'm sending this as a photo message. And the last and important piece of data, still calling add post data hash, and then the tag for this is photo, and I'm sending photo, which is the uchar array of characters, and I'm also passing the file name. So there's an extra argument that goes to add post data if I'm adding this photo. And then I simply want to finish off the post data so that it's in the correct format with an array copy, post data, comma, and then dash dash plus hash plus dash dash backslash r backslash n. So this is carriage return line feed. Now, the array copy function doesn't accept a string. What I have is another array copy function that I've written that takes this string and converts that to a character array and then calls the standard array copy function to add it to post data, and we'll see that soon. And then the other argument that gets passed in here is headers, and you can see that that has the ampersand, so we're going to be returning a value in that, and the headers are actually used when I'm sending post data. And it's very simple: content type, colon, multipart slash form data, semicolon, boundary equals, and the hash. So this is so that the post data will understand what that barrier is, or the delimiter that I've put in place, because this is not a standard value, this hash. It can be almost anything I want to make, and therefore I need to tell the post how I can understand that hash, or what that hash is. And now the add post data function, and I've got two variations of this. One as here, where I'm passing the post data, the hash, a string is effectively the key or the tag, and then a string value. And the other, as I've used here for the actual photo, still with post data hash, the key value, but then binary data, as in a uchar array, and a name that goes with that. So there are two different overloads of this function. And this is the first. So this takes the post data, the hash, a key, which I'm defaulting to an empty string, and of the value, which is also defaulting to an empty string. I declare a uchar value array, and I convert this string value into that value array with the string to char array function. Value array beginning at position 0 for string len value. Remember to include this. If you simply leave this blank, there is a default value, which is whole array, but strings in MetaTrader are 0 terminated. So if you simply left out this argument, you would get the entire string plus that 0 value at the end of the array. So it's important to call this with comma string len value. And then I call the second variation of the add post data hash, the key, and the value array. So that way I'll have one piece of code that handles everything as an array of characters. And now that second variant to add post data. All the same arguments up to the value, where here I'm passing in a character array. And I've also added string file name equals empty string. So remember that for the photo, I'm also passing the file name. I've made it an optional by having a default value here, and that's why I don't need to pass that in from this call above. I also said that hash initially is empty, So if hash is an empty string, then I'm setting hash to another function that I'll write in a moment called hash. But all that really does is create a 32 character string of hash value. And now I have to populate or add to this data array the values that are going to be passed through. And post data, as I said, has a very specific format for every element that gets passed. So it begins with a carriage return line feed. And remember, I said array copy doesn't normally take strings. So this is actually calling my version of array copy, which simply converts this to a character array and then calls the standard array copy. But first thing I append is carriage return line feed, and then this dash dash plus the hash value plus carriage return line feed. Now there's a certain difference if I'm passing a photo. So if file name is equal to an empty string, then this is just going to be text. So I array copy onto the end of data, content disposition, form dash data, semicolon, name equals, and then that key that I passed. So something like chat ID, name equals. This backslash is simply a special character because I'm embedding a double quotation mark inside a string here. So the backslash quotation mark simply embeds the quotation mark plus the key. So I'm saying name equals chat ID, for example, and then this also finishes with carriage return line feed. If I did pass a file name, then this is slightly different. It still has name equals the key, but then I also have file name equals and then the file name \rn, and then another carriage return line feed followed by the data. So the value is always passed in by the time we get here as a uchar array. So I'm simply using array copy onto the end of data, that uchar array beginning at the position array size data. And then I finish that all with a carriage return line feed. So that's the format for a single element being added to the post data array. And then I just return. So because I'm calling this repeatedly, it keeps adding data to the end of that post data. And now the array copy that I've written that accepts a string, all I'm doing is converting that string source into an array. So I'm declaring a uchar source array, string to char array, source array from character 0 for the length of that source string, and then I call the standard array copy function onto DST, the destination, copying the source array, beginning at position array size of destination. So that's why I'm appending to this array. And then this 0 says that I want to begin from position 0 of that source array, and then I want to copy the entire array, so array size of the source array. So that simply appends source after it's been converted to a uchar array onto the end of the destination, and then I return. And now that hash function, which we called here, I'm just declaring another uchar array temp that I'll be using for working space. I'm creating a seed value and I'm just using the current time. There's no secrecy to this. I just want to create something that's different each time. So I'm simply using the time current, converting that integer to string, and that gives me my seed string. I get the length, string to character array or string to char array. So I'm converting that seed into this temp uchar, beginning at position 0 for the length of that seed, and that returns the number of characters. So len will then be the length of or will be the size of this temp array. I'm initializing hash to an empty string, and then I'm looping through for I equals 0 while I is less than the length I++, and I'm appending to hash using string format this %02x of each character using TMP I. The 02x or %02x will return a hexadecimal value. So at the end of this, hash contains the hexadecimal representation of seed. But I don't want all of that, I only want 16 characters. So then I say hash equals string substr hash beginning with 0 for 16 characters. So that gives me the first 16 characters of hash, and then I return that. That is everything. I can just compile that. Okay, so the code already is set to capture a screenshot. Scrolling back to the top here. I'm already capturing a screenshot. I'm not sure which particular chart it will show, but I'll get a screenshot of a chart. It will send test message with time to string just as plain text, and then make the same call again with time to string, but this time passing the screenshot. That message was successfully sent. I'll bring this across, and you can see here's the first one, which just says test message and the date and time. The second message, where it shows the text as a caption, and I actually changed the message here to test message with image, although the time is the same, and here is the screenshot. And so that code will send Telegram messages. You can either send the message as just plain text, or you can send the message including a screenshot or any other file that you want to send to Telegram. Just be aware that Telegram has some restrictions on that screenshot or the image file that you send in terms of maximum size and dimensions. You can check those out with Telegram. You shouldn't have a problem with it, but I'm not going to embed those values because they may be changed from time to time by Telegram. So just be aware you might have a problem if you try to send a very large file. Also remember to set the, set this in your expert allow web calls, and get your chat ID and Telegram bot token from Telegram. And the final thing to remember, because this uses the web request call, web request cannot be called from indicators. So if you want to set something up to send periodic Telegram messages, you'll have to run that as an expert. And that's all for this tutorial. I hope this has been useful to you. If it has, then click the like button, and if you want to see more of our videos, click subscribe, and then if you click the bell icon, you'll also be notified when we release new videos. Thank you for watching.